In 2005, a mother walked into a police station in Palm Beach, Florida. Her 15-year-old daughter had been paid to visit the home of a wealthy financier. What happened inside that house was a crime. The Palm Beach police investigated. They found more victims. Then more. Then more. Dozens of young girls, some as young as 13, all recruited with the same promise: easy money for a massage. The man at the center of it all was named Jeffrey Epstein. He had a private island, a private jet, homes in New York, Palm Beach, New Mexico, and Paris. A contact book containing some of the most powerful names on the planet: princes, presidents, prime ministers, scientists, billionaires. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and in 2008, he was sentenced to 18 months in a county jail. Not federal prison, a county jail, with work release privileges that allowed him to leave 6 days a week. The prosecutor who arranged that deal later became a cabinet secretary in the United States government, and the victims were not even told the deal was being made until it was done. Welcome back to Mysterious History, the channel where the official story is never the whole story. Today, we are covering a story that is not ancient history, not cold case history. It is recent, documented, confirmed by court records, FBI files, and the testimony of dozens of victims. The story of Jeffrey Epstein, a man who ran a decades-long criminal operation involving the systematic abuse of minors, who was protected by a system of wealth, connections, and institutional failure so comprehensive that it allowed him to continue for years after his crimes were first reported, who was finally arrested in 2019, and who died in a maximum security federal prison 6 weeks later, in circumstances that the official explanation has never fully resolved. This is not a conspiracy theory. Every fact in this video is documented. The conspiracy is the story itself. Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York in 1953. He was mathematically gifted. He attended Cooper Union and New York University studying mathematics, but left without completing a degree. In 1974, he was hired as a mathematics teacher at the Dalton School in Manhattan, one of the most exclusive private schools in America. It was there that he met his first significant patron. Alan Greenberg, the chairman of the investment bank Bear Stearns, was a Dalton parent. Impressed by Epstein, Greenberg helped him secure a position at Bear Stearns in 1976. With no college degree and no financial experience, Epstein proved talented. He rose quickly, and then, in 1981, he left Bear Stearns under circumstances that were never made fully public. He established his own financial management firm. He claimed to manage money exclusively for clients with over $1 billion in assets. He was extraordinarily secretive about his client list, about his business model, about the source of his apparent wealth. Financial investigators who have looked at Epstein's business since his arrest have struggled to identify a legitimate explanation for his level of wealth. The question of where his money actually came from has never been definitively answered. What made Epstein uniquely dangerous was not just his crimes, it was his connections. By the 1990s, Epstein had cultivated relationships with an extraordinary roster of powerful people: Prince Andrew of the British royal family, Bill Clinton, former President of the United States, Donald Trump, future President of the United States, Alan Dershowitz, one of America's most famous lawyers, Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, Stephen Hawking, the theoretical physicist, hundreds of others across politics, finance, science, and entertainment. His private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express by the press, carried many of these individuals to his various properties, including his private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Little St. James, where, according to victim testimony, the abuse of minors took place. Flight logs from the aircraft documented dozens of trips by prominent passengers. Epstein collected relationships the way other people collect assets, and according to investigators and victims, the relationships served a purpose: information, compromising information about powerful people that could be used to ensure silence and protection. In 2005, the Palm Beach Police Department began investigating Epstein following a complaint from a victim's mother. The investigation was thorough. Officers identified 36 potential victims. They documented a clear pattern of recruitment, abuse, and payment. They believed the evidence supported federal charges that could result in a life sentence. The case was referred to the FBI and federal prosecutors. And here is where the story becomes genuinely disturbing. The federal prosecutor assigned to the case was Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. Acosta entered into negotiations with Epstein's lawyers. The result was a non-prosecution agreement that shocked those familiar with the evidence. Epstein pleaded guilty to 2 state charges of soliciting prostitution, including soliciting a minor. He was sentenced to 18 months in Palm Beach County Jail, not federal prison, with permission to leave the facility on work release 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. He served 13 months and was released. The non-prosecution agreement also granted immunity from federal prosecution to Epstein and any potential co-conspirators. Co-conspirators who were never named in the agreement, and who were therefore also protected. Critically, the agreement was kept secret from the victims. Federal law requires that victims be notified and consulted in cases like this. They were not. A federal judge later ruled that their rights had been violated. Alexander Acosta went on to become Secretary of Labor in the Trump administration in 2017. He resigned in 2019 when the Epstein story re-emerged. For a decade after his release, Epstein continued his life largely undisturbed. He traveled internationally. He maintained his properties. He continued to socialize with powerful people. The Miami Herald changed everything. In November 2018, journalist Julie Brown published a devastating investigative series called Perversion of Justice. It documented in extraordinary detail the full scope of Epstein's crimes and the failures of the justice system that had allowed him to escape meaningful consequences. The series was read by millions. It generated enormous public pressure for a new federal investigation. On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, returning from Paris on his private jet. He was charged by federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. The charges included sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. The evidence was described by prosecutors as overwhelming. Investigators who searched his Manhattan mansion found a safe containing compact discs labeled with handwritten names, thousands of photographs, and other materials that prosecutors described as highly disturbing. Bail was denied. Epstein was remanded to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, one of the most secure federal detention facilities in the United States. And 6 weeks later, he was dead. Jeffrey Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center on the morning of August 10, 2019. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. The New York City medical examiner ruled the cause of death suicide by hanging. A subsequent independent forensic examination commissioned by Epstein's brother reached a different conclusion. The independent forensic pathologist, Dr. Michael Baden, concluded that the injuries were more consistent with homicide by strangulation than suicide by hanging. The specific injuries noted included fractures to bones in the neck that are more commonly associated with strangulation than hanging, particularly in someone of Epstein's age. In the days after his death, a series of institutional failures emerged that raised serious questions. Epstein had been placed on suicide watch following a previous incident 3 weeks earlier. He had been taken off suicide watch. The 2 guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes had both fallen asleep, according to official accounts, and had falsified log entries to cover this. The security cameras outside his cell malfunctioned that night and recorded nothing. The Attorney General at the time, William Barr, stated publicly that he was skeptical of the suicide conclusion. A sitting Attorney General, skeptical of the official conclusion in a case under his department's jurisdiction. The full circumstances of Epstein's death have never been conclusively established. The FBI investigation into his death was closed without public conclusion. Epstein's death did not end the legal story. His associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, the British socialite daughter of media mogul Robert Maxwell, was arrested in July 2020. She had been Epstein's closest associate for decades. Prosecutors described her as his primary recruiter and groomer of victims. In December 2021, she was convicted on 5 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. During her trial, the names of Epstein's associates were a constant subject of public interest. The victims and their advocates argued that Maxwell did not operate alone, that the network Epstein built involved more people than have been publicly identified or prosecuted. Documents related to the case have been released in stages, each release producing new names, new connections, new questions about who knew what and when, the full scope of the network, the full list of those involved. The full accounting of what happened on that private island has never been made public and may never be. Trash. Jeffrey Epstein abused dozens of minors over multiple decades. He was protected by wealth, by connections, by institutional failures, so comprehensive they are difficult to attribute entirely to incompetence. He was finally arrested with overwhelming evidence against him. Evidence that could have implicated some of the most powerful people in the world. And 6 weeks later, he was dead in a maximum security federal facility with malfunctioning cameras and guards who fell asleep, and a conclusion that the Attorney General himself said he found hard to believe. The official story is that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide, that the system, while imperfect, ultimately delivered some form of justice through the conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell. The victims and their advocates tell a different story, a story about a network that has never been fully exposed, about powerful people who have never been held accountable, about a justice system that failed the most vulnerable people it existed to protect for years, repeatedly, and at every level. The official story is not the whole story. It never is. Subscribe to Mysterious History for new mysteries every week. The official story is never the whole story. Coming up next on Mysterious History, mind control experiments on unwitting civilians. democratically elected governments overthrown on American orders, assassination plots against foreign leaders, and it is all in the declassified files. The real history of the CIA. Next week on Mysterious History.